Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bella Gamer, and today we have the Duskwing over here. A very interesting frame. It's a size 1/2, and it's like a glass cannon, but without the boom. It's a controller and support frame, but it's got some very interesting stats. It's a very cool mech though, and I love its narrative flair. If you get the time, read the compendium entry over here on CompCon. It's really interesting. A lot of this mech is very interesting. But I will say, like, it's kind of designed to be an assassin, but it's not really an assassin. You'll see what I mean here in a moment. So first, let's go ahead and take a look at the base frame traits here. So you can see here that it has less than average armor, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it also has 6 HP, which makes it incredibly squishy, being on the low end of HP and as well having no armor. But it does have an insane evasion of 12 and actually a kind of lacking E defense. Actually, something I'm very surprised about, considering its abysmal heat capacity of 4. Granted, I think that's on the low end of average, but that's still really low considering that it's a very squishy mech by all rights. It's hard to hit because it's like a fly, it zips around. A mech you're definitely going to want to invest in your agility in to survive at all. But I kind of wish the E defense was a little higher. Maybe you were going to want to invest in your systems as well. But other than that, it's pretty normal. It's got an average sensor range of 10. It's got a bonus to its tech attack though, which is cool, and a really low repair capacity. I don't even think that repair capacity honestly matters all too much, considering how squishy the mech is anyway. And it actually does have an increase to its save target, which is kind of cool. And it is actually kind of fast. Not the fastest mech, but it is pretty speedy. And it's got I think it's just below average on system points, which is something I'm also very surprised about. Now, some of the reasons why I think it has kind of like it's got some really high stats and some really low stats, but the reason why I think like it doesn't have as much E defense, for instance, or it doesn't have as many system points, are its traits. You can see here the traits are very good. Maneuverability jets allows the Duskwing to hover when it moves, so whenever it gets to any level of elevation, it just hovers across, which is actually really good. Most mechs can't do that. Now, its Harley Quinn cloak is also really cool, but it's mostly just for getting out of trouble. As during its turn, the Duskwing is invisible and it only reappears at the end of its turn, no matter what it does during its turn, which is really cool. But this is mostly just to avoid reactions than anything else. Very handy for this style of mech, but definitely something that is not very offensive, of course. And then we have it's fragile. It's a size 1/2 mech, so it's kind of obvious. But it does take a difficulty on hull checks and saves, which is one of the reasons why, like, I feel like putting into hull at all is not what you'd want to do with this mech. Like, the point of this mech is not to get hit. So if you're putting points in hull, I mean, that gives you a little bit of a safety net, but I feel like those points could go to something else. Now, here's the real kicker for me. I'll move my camera here. You can see here with the two mounts, it has an aux mount and a flex mount, which is either a main or an aux. So it's not bad as far as, mounts are concerned. I like both of these mounts, but it definitely doesn't have any firepower. And it makes sense. Again, having a heavy wouldn't make sense because it's a very small mech. And having only one main mount potentially is not terrible for sure, but it just this feels like a mech that should have more punch to it, and instead it's not really designed to. it- You'll see here with some of the features. It's a very interesting mech. Don't get me wrong. It's a very, very cool mech. It's just a style of play that I haven't seen done very well. It's a support style of mech, controller style mech that is also very glass cannony in the sense that you hit it and it just blows up, which feels very high risk reward for a support role. when honestly, like high risk reward stuff is used typically for striker type mechs. You want people to feel that thrill and to be able to do something impactful on the battlefield. And I think you can still definitely run the Duskwing as a striker type mech. It's a lot of its features are just not orientated towards it. It has no features that necessarily help its offensive capabilities, and its mounts are good. To me, it strikes me as a mech that really wants to use like Nexus style smart targeting stuff to hit around corners. But yeah, I don't know. This is a very interesting mech. But let's go ahead and go down here to its Dihyde, Dihyde, Dyad. I think it's Dyad. Dyad articulation. And I'll go ahead and hide my face here for a moment so we can talk about it. So you get the active feature Hall of Mirrors. Hall of Mirrors allows you to, at any point for the rest of the scene, whenever you start a unique movement. So when you use a standard move, a boost, a move granted by any talents or systems, or when you overcharge to boost again, you leave a holographic imprint of yourself in the space from which you started. These illusory objects are the same size as you and have immunity to all damage and effects and aren't obstructions. Whenever a hostile character, though, starts their turn in one of these, moves through one of these, or moves adjacent to a space occupied by a hologram, it detonates. They must make an agility save or take a d6 energy damage, and on success, they take half damage. You also gain the hologram teleport quick action, which I do believe counts as movements for all intents and purposes. So this also can be used as one of your quick actions on your turn. So as a quick action, you may instantly teleport to the location of any hologram within a range of 50 hexes, I guess, as a quick action. When you do so, all extant holograms detonate, creating burst 1 explosions that deal 1d6 energy damage with an agility save, like the normal feature does. You may not create any new holograms until the start of your next turn. So the hologram teleport is really good if you use you use your move and your boost, and then you can do this to create 2 explosions, or you can overcharge potentially to create more. But overcharging is not something you necessarily want to do because your heat capacity is pretty low. So overall, I really like this system. I like the fact that honestly, you can create traps. It feels really fun. I feel like playing this mech particularly is really fun. But it still leaves me with this thought that like it's kind of assassiny in the way that you want to get in between the enemies and create explosions and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, to be fair, this really lends itself to it because you can, if you invest in a lot of your agility, get a high movement speed, obviously, you can start your movement, leaving a hologram, you go to where all the enemies are, then you boost cut away, and then you can teleport back to where you were and blow all the enemies up if they're adjacent to them. Or you can even just move up and then teleport, because I believe the teleport also should leave. It should count as a movement, right? So you can move in, teleport back, and create an explosion. And then you still have a quick action to do anything else with. And because you're invisible, you don't need to worry about engagement. So this is a very good power, and I like the Duskwing overall. I think it's a very interesting mech, and I think it's something that offers a lot of potential, but I feel like it might feel like a trap to some people when they read the text and they kind of look it over and like, oh, it's glass cannon, and it's really not. But let's go ahead and look at the license so you can see a little bit more what I mean. So first up, we have the Veil Rifle. Now, this rifle actually does not do a bad amount of damage. It does 1d3 plus 1 energy damage, and it's a main rifle, so you can have, this weapon as your main weapon if you want. And the best part is that this weapon does not affect attacked allies caught in the line. Instead, it shrouds them in a field of corsating energy that throws all targeting systems off, giving them soft cover until the end of their next turn. This is really good if you can line up an ally and an enemy in the same shot, and because the soft cover lasts until the end of their turn. They can benefit from it even on their turn, which is pretty cool. It's also accurate, which I love accurate weapons. This is definitely a very like it feels like a good attacky weapon, even though it's not one of the best ones out there, honestly, considering there's others that do better damage even as main weapons. Being accurate and having a pretty decent range of 10 line, you can hit multiple enemies. This is pretty cool. This is what I think will lead people to believe that this is more of like an assassin style of mech. But it doesn't have much to back it up. We saw the systems and we saw everything. It can get into a place, shoot this, get somewhere else. But even its main core system kind of wants it to get close to enemies or to leave traces of itself where enemies are. A lot of the license in general is going to be just keeping the mech alive more than anything. But I don't know. I do like this. And again, like I said, I do think there's very high like assassin potential for this mech, even though when you consider pure firepower, it's not going to be able to compete with other mechs. This is still not bad damage by any means. So I do like it. I like the Veil Rifle a lot. I think the Veil Rifle can work with a lot of mechs, especially because it does energy damage, which is a little bit more unique amongst weapons in the game, honestly, and it's accurate, which is really good. Also, here at the rank 1 is the Neurospike, which gives you 2 invades. Strike Code, which is a really good one. You invade, and until the end of the next target's turn, they take 2 heat whenever they attack. That's devastating, and that's gonna shut a lot of enemies down as long as they're capable of taking heat. Obviously, won't work on biologicals. I don't think you can invade biologicals anyway, so not a big issue. You're not going to use this mech against this this particular system, but you're not going to use the Duskwing against biologicals anyway. Regardless, Strike Code's really good. It's very much a I don't want this person to attack on their turn, or if they do, they're going to need to pay a pretty heavy cost for it. So that being the case, I really like it. Mirage is not bad. So choose yourself or an ally character. Your systems relay blur the target with images of their actual silhouette. Your target treats you or the character you chose as invisible until the end of their next turn. So really good for getting people out of bad situations. Not really good for you if you're using the Duskwing anyway, as you're invisible on your turn anyway. But this does last until the end of oh, it's yeah. Until that target's next turn, which means this can still get you out of bad situations because this will be invisibility on their turn as well. So pretty good. It's a unique system. So overall, first level, we actually have some pretty decent systems. Strike Code is a really good burner. I mean, Invade already does burner. It does heat. Strike Code already does heat just being an invade, and then it can make extra heat or force the enemy to not attack. Really solid, and Mirage can be really good for getting someone or yourself out of a bad situation, depending on number of enemies, corridors, all that kind of stuff. So not bad, and this is a rank 1. This is a really solid rank 1 like invade system. So even if you're playing a very like a hacker mech in general, Neurospike actually might not be bad. In fact, Strike Code I think is a really good standard hack to have on most type of hacker mechs. So a really, really solid rank 1 for the Duskwing. Really, really good. All right, at rank 2, along with the Duskwing itself, we get the Burst Launcher, another main weapon, which is very interesting. It's very rare you see a mech that can't equip everything in its license, essentially. And this is one of those situations, as it only has one potential main mount, meaning that it's either going to be using the Veil Rival or the Burst Launcher. Now, the Burst Launcher is pretty cool, though, because in addition to using explosive damage, a D3, a little bit less than the Veil Rifle, it has a longer range of 15 and it deals heat, making this really feasible to add on to a meltdown style build with the Duskwing where it hacks enemies, burns a lot of heat, and then can even shoot them as well on the same turn, dealing heat potentially with this weapon. Now, on critical hit with this weapon as well, the target becomes impaired until the end of their next turn, making a very solid choice as a controller mech. It's accurate, which I love, and it's arcing, meaning that you don't need to worry about cover or you don't need to worry about obstructions as long as they're within range, and they don't have any overhead protection. Really cool. They still obviously are affected by cover, so it will be harder to hit, but it's accurate, so it kind of counters that, making this one of the more interesting, I would say, launcher weapons that have arcing, especially as the accuracy kind of negates some of the penalties of using arcing in general. Now, it doesn't create an explosion radius, which a lot of arcing launcher weapons do, but still, it's pretty good. It's like pretty much using a rocket launcher, which I think is very fun. I actually really like this weapon. I can't really pick between the Veil Rifle or the Burst Launcher, which I think is a good thing. It makes either one useful in some situations. I think the Burst Launcher is really good if you want to go down more the systems hacking kind of route. I think the Veil Rifle is really good for going high agility, as if you can get multiple enemies in a line, you can do some decent damage, or you can support an ally by shooting through an ally and an enemy at the same time. So overall, really good weapon choices. It's very interesting, to say the least. We also have a really good system here at rank 2. We have the flicker field projector. And what it oh, my head's blocking a little bit. So what it does is, for one system point, whenever you boost or make a standard move, you project a holographic pattern of yourself, leaving a dazzling after image that makes it hard to discern your precise location. You count as invisible the next time you're attacked. You can only benefit from one instance of this effect at a time. So if you're not attacked on your next turn or whatever, you're still actually protected by this. It doesn't actually have a duration. The only duration, I guess, would be until the next time you're attacked. This is mandatory on the Duskwing, I would say, as a pickup, and it's 1 point, so it's really easy. It's a really good system for a lot of mechs. There's a lot of mechs that can benefit from this 1 point here. It's a 1 point system. This is very powerful. Really, really strong. So yeah, Duskwing has some really good like weapons, and it has a really good system here, and some really good hacking. Like, the Duskwing license is very solid. I really, really love it, despite maybe some of my misgivings on the mech itself. At rank 3, we have the Stun Crown. Stun Crown's actually really cool because, as a quick action with a limited 2 system, you can create a burst 3 flash of light. All hostile characters, specified hostile, so you can use this near allies without affecting them, which is really cool. Within the affected area and line of sight of you, must make an agility save or become jammed. Woof. Jammed's a rough one. And a system save or become impaired. These effects last until the end of their next turn. Characters in cover from you are not affected by this system. So this is a system that makes you want to dive into the enemies using your core system as the Duskwing, and then just explode with light and then teleport away, making the enemies' lives a living hell. Now, it is a limited system, so, investing in your engineering is probably not a bad idea, especially with the Duskwing's really low heat capacity and not a super high E defense either. It's something that you should keep in mind. Your engineering can be very helpful for the bonus of this limited system, but also just making it where you have a higher heat capacity. And yeah, so this mech this mech definitely leans into a variety of build styles, which I think is very good. And the Stun Crown is a very powerful effect, both jammed and impaired on just a quick action, even on a limited system, is pretty good. And this is only 2 system points. So overall, this one gets a huge thumbs up from me. I don't know if I would I would go 3 ranks into Duskwing just for Stun Crown, but there's a lot of good things you pick up on the way, so it's kind of up to you. This is really good if you're just interested in the Duskwing itself, I would say. And now the final system here, and I guess before I get into it, If you're enjoying this content, please leave a like to let other people see this. More people need to know about Lancer, in my opinion. So it really help out the channel, and as well, subscribe to help the channel out even more to see more Lancer content like this. I cover about 1 to 2 Lancer videos a week, and I'm going through all the mechs, so you can find on a playlist on the channel all the mechs I've done up until this point. But let's go ahead and get into the Oasis Wall, the final system here in the Duskwing. And this one is very interesting to me. So you can activate the Oasis Wall as a protocol, but when you do so, and until the start of your next turn, you can only move in straight lines. Now, this doesn't mean all your movement needs to be in one particular line, but every time you move, it has to be in a straight line. So you can move in one direction and then you can burst in another direction if you so choose. And that's honestly the way you're going to want to do this, because as you do so, you create a light barrier made of contiguous sections of light that are the same size as your mech, or a minimum size one if you're a size 1/2 mech. I don't know why it says point or 0.5 mech. That's never used in the game like anywhere else. It should just say 1/2 using the 1/2, but I don't know. Anyway, in each space you move through. This barrier grants hard cover to adjacent characters, and characters that benefit from this cover also gain resistance to energy. Now, the barrier doesn't count as an obstruction, as enemies can passively move through it, but it can't take damage either, and no character can end their movement in it. Even force movement that would force the character to end in that space stops just short, as they're stopped by the wall. Now, this is a system that provides 2 heat to yourself when you use this. That's something very important. And it's 3 system points. And it limits your movement. And the barrier it creates only gives hard cover when an allied character, or any character actually, yeah, it grants any adjacent character hard cover when they're adjacent to it, and it's only when they're adjacent to it. Now, I don't know why this system is so expensive, or it also has a 2 heat self. Now, it does give you the ability to give energy resistance, but energy weapons aren't super common. And like this seems like a system that's too big brain for me to get my head around. There might be situations where you can utilize this. But the hard part, as well, as if you're using the Duskwing, for instance, you're going to be at the end of this rainbow wherever you lead it. Like, yeah, you can kind of double back somehow because of the hex system. You can kind of benefit from this, but that's not really the point. It Because like you can't even use your teleport hologram core system, because you would just go to any point in this wall that you created. So I don't know why this is in the Duskwing. This would be honestly pretty cool as a defender mech, though. Like a defender mech with the Oasis Wall. It's expensive, so I mean, like, it's a choice. But this is a way you could move in front of your allies to create a barrier for them, giving them hard cover. And then you, at the end of this barrier, can just sit down and do whatever. I think that's fine. But for the Duskwing, it seems very strange. This also just seems like it has a ton of costs that I don't see the major benefit of, especially because characters only benefit from the hard cover as long as they're adjacent. So, yeah, I don't know. It's something that I think is very strange here, and maybe someone in the comments can let me know why this is good in particular, but I am honestly having a hard time seeing it. Now, again, like I said, I think this is good if you're going as a defender frame. I don't know why elsewise you'd be a defender frame going into Duskwing, though. But this one, I could see very much being a really cool defender ability. But I don't know. Maybe this one works better when you're paired up with like a Black Witch who can move you behind the cover that you're creating or something. Uh, but I don't know. Like I said, at least it doesn't cost any actions. So everything else you're doing on your turn is just kind of you. And I guess, I mean, Okay, maybe. Well, but it's a two heat, and the Duskwing just doesn't have a. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very weird one, but hey. Anyway, that is the Duskwing here. Very, very cool. I absolutely love this mech. I think it's very interesting. If maybe a little five head to play. Depending, it's very flimsy. You got to play very intelligently to get the most out of it. And even then, it's mostly as a support slash controller frame style. Though I will say the Veil Rifle and the Burst Launcher do give you some pretty good offensive abilities as well. Even though the Duskwing itself doesn't necessarily lend itself well into offensive, turns. So that being the case, I do love this license and I think it's pretty cool. So that's gonna be it for this video. Next video, I don't know if it's gonna be this week or next week. Got a lot of things coming up. We got the Gorgon. Oh, this is a fun mech. This is a really fun defender mech, and it's a very weird mech. If you're looking for a horse mechs that are very strange and almost para-casual, the Gorgon frame is going to be one of the stranger ones. So, yeah, it's going to be a really good one. Can't wait for that. That's going to be it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.